to maximum PhpStorm. I myself have attended a number of other talks that have talked about the subject matter of PhpStorm, and they've all been great, so I kind of felt bad about giving this one. But on the other hand, I've always wanted to give a talk about PhpStorm because I can't shut up about PhpStorm. So I hope this is good.
So do we.
No pressure. I just want to learn a little bit about you so I can try to cater this talk a little bit. How many people develop things? Doesn't matter if it's front end, back end. You're my people. How many people are here to learn about how to use your tools, maybe specifically PhpStorm, but just in general tools, deeply? Maybe some of the things that I'm talking about, how in my journey of learning PhpStorm, you can just take whatever your favorite tool. Okay.
Who wants to know the question?
Everybody. Okay, this is a warm-up thing. I'm just kidding. My name is Chris Weber, and I am known on Drupal as Cosmic Dreams. I'm a PHP enthusiast, also work at the Nerdery. Shout out to them for sponsoring me to be here. I've tried to make this talk accessible to people who are just starting out in development, just finding their tool of choice, just getting going, but I do tend to nerd out really hard, and so that's probably where we're headed, but hopefully we start at a way that's accessible to everybody, and just give me the look that I've lost you, and I will try to rein it in. I'm just apologizing ahead of time. So I've been thinking a lot about developing things lately. My daughter just graduated grade school. She's headed to middle school next year, and I've been thinking about how we could possibly work on things together. She doesn't code anything, but she's really into what I'm doing, and she loves drawing, so I've been trying to think about how do I talk about the things that I do in the way that she's ready to hear it. And that got me thinking about the process of development itself. As makers, whether you work with digital things or physical things, you tend to find people who really love their tools. My father-in-law, farmer, mechanic, loves his tool set. He does incredible things. He fixes his own tractor every time it busts. You can't go and get that fixed in the shop. He saves tons of money coming in to help us. He's really awesome. And I've known friends that are artists and work with drafting, like AutoCAD, and they'll talk to you forever about AutoCAD. Don't start that conversation. As developers, we tend to also love our tools. Every time I talk about PhpStorm, I kind of feel a little heat on, like maybe I'm telling them they should switch from Atom, or maybe they're thinking I'm saying that they should stop using Visual Studio Code, the new fancy thing that all my front-end developers that I work with love. I'm not telling you not to use those. Those are great. I love them too. I started with, I still love Sublime Text. It just feels like home to me. I love it. So learning a tool deeply is a huge, valuable thing for the day-to-day grind of what we have to do as developers when we develop things. We need confidence. We need the ability to feel powerful and that we can solve the problems that are ahead of us. I love PhpStorm for all those reasons. I'll get into a little bit about that, but we're going to dive right into the meat pretty soon. I talk about PhpStorm to the point where my colleagues know that just periodically through the week, I'm going to turn to them and say, hey, you know what's so great about PhpStorm? And then they'll just humor me while I go into the thing that I just learned. A lot of the folks in the Twin Cities here know that they just shouldn't bring up the topic around me because I'm probably going to rant about it for 30 minutes and start talking about all the things that I think are awesome. So today, like I said, is a big moment for me because basically I have the next 45 minutes to nerd out. You signed up for this. When I started development, I worked with Visual Studio a lot, and it was great for me because I was like a new developer and really unconfident about my ability to solve problems and to make things. And Visual Studio was totally overwhelming, but it came with awesome tutorials and sample projects, and I was able to tinker until I figured out things. I could always rely on the fact that it had a debugger ready to use. I didn't know that that was a difficult thing for other places. I could always just put that breakpoint down and get to it and see what's going on. I felt powerful and I felt professional, even though I had no right to say I was a professional. And I felt really cool about the idea that no one really taught me how to use it. I had to tinker until I had to figure out how to get things going. And that's why moving to PHP was very difficult for me. At the time, I loved Drupal still, but I was just a site builder. I didn't really just, figured out the right recipe of modules to bring in and build things that way. I didn't actually dive into the code. But when I had to, I was completely lost, and I was completely powerless because I couldn't do the things that I know how to do. Eventually, I found PhpStorm, and I was okay with some of the complaints I hear most often, that it's just too complex. Because Visual Studio, I've never found a tool that's complex as Visual Studio. And so it's like, oh, this is how tools are supposed to be. With PhpStorm, I could finally solve all the problems that I was used to solving. And because PhpStorm has been constantly iterating over the 7 years that I've been using it, it's gotten a lot better, and I've gotten a lot better with it. I definitely feel that this one thing being introduced to the petri dish of my development evolution has leveled up my skills, and that's why I'm excited to be talking to you today. So that's the goal. That's what we're going to try to do. This is my first attempt at this talk. This is your first audience I've ever tried to give this to in this way, despite the fact that I can't shut up about this. I hope to hear really great feedback from all of you about how badly or well that I did at the end of this, because I want to give this talk over and over again. So we got about a half hour here, and we'll step through the tasks and challenges that a developer can benefit from in order to level up their skills. And keep in mind, you're here, but I'm really trying to speak to my daughter, so help me with this big thing. She's going to go into middle school. She likes me now, but I only have like a year or so to actually give this talk to her so that she can actually hear me. So let's get started. Oh, I forgot the outline. So, 4 main points we're going to hit. The act of discovery, finding out facts about your code, things that save time, things that save frustration. The digital detective work. People who have been doing development for a while pretty much know where I'm going there. But level 4, the surprise, the grab bag of things, how to adapt the tool to you. I hope you stay tuned for that. Discovery. Big tools like PhpStorm share one common thing. Even tools like Sublime Text, which I think people would be offended if I said that that was a big tool. It's not. It's a very lightweight tool, and they like it that way. I like it that way. But tools, IDEs, development tools, they all try to index all of your code to try to help you remember things about your code. And so a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about are how PhpStorm leverages all the knowledge it tries to index your code for. First up was the one that I loved the most about Visual Studio. It's kind of funny. Visual Studio, at the time that I stopped using it, cost $1,200, and the thing that I loved the most about it was Intellisense, which is like in everything. But Intellisense is really great because it can tell you like what are all the things that you have available at this moment in time in your code. But if you're also accessing things like objects, like this entity object, if it knows what kind of object that is, it can find the different methods the different properties that are also in that method. Intellisense is a good way to tinker. I love to tinker. You can just try out a whole bunch of code, and a lot of it won't work, but you'll eventually find the one that does work, and then you can test that later. Because we all write tests, right? Intellisense, like I said, is a key feature to all programs, because if you didn't have Intellisense, you would basically going straight to the docs to figure out what the right function is for the right moment of time. And that does, in fact, feel as if you're trying to grab a giant book and just try to read the entire book so you can rely on your human memory in order to know everything that is in the book, because we all have mnemonic memories, of course. So, in general, anything that you can do to speed up the process of discovery of what's going on in your code, what's available to your code, is good. It's key to be leveling up your skill as a developer. One of the ways that PhpStorm does that is the search everything feature. It's kind of famous for this. Anytime you open PhpStorm and it doesn't have anything else open, it has and I don't know if I can do this, the mouse over there. And then I'll close. That was supposed to close. Okay, we'll get back to that later. If I can't do that, then it's going to be pretty interesting at the end. Anytime it prompts you that you can press Shift to search for everything. And when I say everything, you can search for names of files, names of functions, names of the objects that it knows about, and Drupal 8 has a ton of objects. But it can also search for things that are very specific to how PHP runs. So you can search for actions, like if you have a front-end build process and you want to launch a front-end build process, you can search for the front-end build process action and just kick it off, whether that be grunt or, what's the other one, gulp, or there are new things now, npm. Okay, not that much for front-end development. And you can also search for configuration settings. You can, if you're trying to find this weird thing that PhpStorm is doing and you want it to stop, you can search for that. But if you know you're searching for a file, you can just jump straight to that. You don't have to pollute your search results with everything else that it's providing. You just search for just for files. And I have provided the Windows shortcuts because every time somebody gives one of these PhpStorm talks, they never mention the Windows shortcuts. These are the same shortcuts for Linux, by the way. These are Windows and Linux shortcuts. Yes, and for whatever reason, it's N for Windows and it's O for Mac, and I have never understood why. I mentioned at the beginning that I recently shifted to a Mac, and it was just, this was the main reason why I was on Windows, because I didn't want to have to relearn all of these shortcuts. And if you want to search for a specific method, a specific function, there is a quick shortcut for that. That is the Option button on your keyboard. So it's Option Shift O instead of Command Shift O. And Control Alt Shift N was just much more pleasant. I don't like, it's very difficult to find that character, the object character for this. Yeah. Okay, no more tangents. One of the new things that I've been liking is that if you have a function, you can use the Command P in order to find the parameter hits. And that saves the frustration of, like, whenever you're trying to write a function and you've used it forever, but you can never remember what arguments it takes or what type of thing that is supposed to be. And sure, you could just try to write whatever you think it should be, but then the Intellisense would say, you did it wrong. But not always explain how you did it wrong. So, parameter hits, really awesome. One of the cool things about how PhpStorm and the Drupal community have worked together is the fact that PhpStorm actually knows how to find the Drupal documentation about whatever you're using. If you're in a Drupal module, you can select the name of the function, and then you can press Shift F1 which on a Mac you have to press the stupid FN button in order to access. And then you'll be able to open a browser and take you directly to the Drupal.org documentation page. You can also right-click the function and select the Search in Drupal API option, and it will open a browser. You'll find the documentation. I need to make this bigger. One of the most awesome things that IDEs like Sublime Text have started to add not recently, in the last couple of years, is the go to definition. And was one of the original reasons why I was totally all in at using PhpStorm. Because if you have a function, you can, as this, by the way, can you see this video while it plays? I really need to click here. There you go. You can click on the name of a function and press Command B to go to the definition of like where that function is defined. And that's really great because usually, well, all the time, because Drupal makes this a point to do for every new thing that we add, there's great documentation for that right there in the comment that's above that function. It explains exactly why it exists and why you should be using it, and its arguments and everything. If I'm adopting somebody else's code, I usually don't get that. But I can always expect that with Drupal. Go to definition. You can also do it the other way, though. If you have the definition of a function, okay, I'm going to try this. No, that's not what was supposed to happen. Oh, there we go. You can find where it's used, and that's useful because you could be getting an error message, and it could be saying that, hey, this function was used, and you were bad at using it, and so you have to find out where it's used. And this function helps you track down all the places where it is used. By the way, if you can't see this, please raise your hand, and I will full screen this so we can see it better. So yeah, that's what I did. Found a function, Control F7, and then we've got a list of definitions that we could just work through. So, come on. Do the thing where you go to the next slide. Thank you. Those were discoveries. If you have any questions, comments, rude remarks, you can go to the link that's above, and they'll be accruing a bunch of questions that I will definitely get to. Let me see if I can look if there's anything so far. Nothing so far. Get on that. Time and frustration savers. These are the things that I've loved about PhpStorm, because anything that removes frustration and shortens the time for me to solve a problem makes me feel mighty. A lot of people who know about PhpStorm know that there's a really great Drupal extension. There is the ability in the Drupal extension for you to create like a new module. Here I am in the doc root. I'm going to create a new module folder, and then I'm going to create a .module file within it. So I think it's supposed to be called test this. The test this module. So I'm going to create a test this.module, and inside there I'm just going to try to say, well, I know that I want to alter something, but I don't really know what I'm going to alter. So I have the list of every alter hook that Drupal has in this list. I could just pick one. Or I don't want to alter anything. I actually want to pre-process the thing that I already know that exists. So let me just jump to that. Let me choose that first pre-process. And then, boom, there's the documentation for it. There are all the arguments for the function, the Drupal hook. Because I don't know about you, but I always forget what the freaking arguments are for all these Drupal hooks. And yeah, I could go to api.drupal.org to look them up, but it would just really awesome that I don't have to do that, and they could do that for me.
Hey Chris, are they called plugins? I'm trying to figure out if I have this. If I go to preferences, I see plugins, but I don't see anything extensions.
All right, so I've proven that the mouse worked in one context. It should work in this context. So yeah, you can open the settings, and then inside the settings, you can search the settings for Drupal. And in the Drupal, which is now in the newest version of, I always use the latest version of PhpStorm.
Right.
So it's now located under frameworks. You can check this checkbox to enable the Drupal implementation, and then tell it what version of Drupal you're using. And then that enables the Drupal integration. But Mike, if you open a brand new Drupal project, PhpStorm will recognize that you've done that, and it will open a little prompt that says, hey, you look like you opened a Drupal project.
Right.
And then that's the quickest way to get it enabled.
But didn't there, so is this extension come with PhpStorm?
It does.
Okay.
It's not a plugin.
All right, there used to be something that you download separately.
And I think that was,
Is that like obsolete now?
yeah,
Okay.
I wouldn't use that.
Because when I go to this on my, and I'm running the latest as well, everything's the same except you have a value in your Drupal installation path. In my
Yep.
link. I'm just trying to.
I mean, you
that looks like that's just for your current project.
Yeah, that's just something I do. That's not a requirement. You can totally skip that. Main points is to tell it that what version of Drupal you're using.
Right.
Right. So that it know the
Depending on
right.
which project you have open, if you're coming back into this setting, that installation path is going to be.
Yeah.
This setting is dependent on the
Yeah.
project. That's all.
You can see at the very top, it says that it knows this configuration
Oh,
setting
for
for
current
this
project.
project only.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
I'm happy. I have confidence that I can do things in that other window for later. Passive scans. Been really excited about passive scans lately. Did you know that you can get PhpStorm to understand Drupal's coding standards? Not just the standard installation profile, but like everything about Drupal's coding standards. There's a little trick, and I'm going to nerd out about that for a second. So if in the settings, you can search for all the things that PHP tries to scan your code passively with. They call that inspections. And so by default, a lot of these inspections are turned on, and it'll scan things about your JavaScript as well as your PHP code. But one of the things that you can turn on optionally, it's not on by default, is PHP Code Sniffer. And in the PHP Code Sniffer, you can tell it to, when it finds something that is in, the PHP Code Sniffer uses the rule set in order to see if everything in your code complies with this rule set. And the Drupal folks have created both the Drupal and Drupal practice rule sets that you can make sure your code abides by. And I like to turn on all the information that this could possibly provide me about that. But by default, you can only use one rule set. You can't use two. So, nerding out now, here's how you do it. And also, jumping a little bit ahead of myself, did you know that PhpStorm had a terminal right there? In Windows, this is crazy! Because the terminal in Windows is terrible. But you can get the terminal to obey, not just use Drupal's command prompt. You can get the terminal to use whatever you want. You can just search for the terminal settings, and then you can configure this shell path to be anything you want. So if you want to use PowerShell in Windows, then you can totally use that. You had a question.
Yeah, so for this terminal, do you run drush in this as well?
Yeah, because it's if you've got you look like a Dell there. So if you're using like Git for Windows, if you use Putty, if you like Putty, you can use Putty. But there's one for Windows. I don't know if you've got like Win10. You can use the Ubuntu command prompt. I was just at the era where that was landing when they forced me onto a Mac, so I never got that one working. But there's like the Git for Windows, and they have like the Ming command prompt, and I could totally just figure out what the shortcut that provided me was, and use that same command to launch the terminal here, and I would totally be able to use that PostX-based command prompt instead of the Windows-based command prompt in the terminal instead. It was amazing. I found it powerful.
So do you use this for your drush commands?
I don't jump out in the terminal ever. My whole thing is like I never want to leave PhpStorm for anything. And we'll get to that. So you can use your terminal, and you can make the terminal be whatever you want it to be. And then over here, what was I going to do? I was going to go, so here's my project, and here's what's really my project. There is a folder in there that is hidden called the idea folder, and in there is everything that PhpStorm generates and it uses for its internal needs. And in there is an inspection profiles folder that creates the PHP code sniffer properties. You got to hack that file. So over here in the coding standard option that gets generated, you have to hack this to, instead of being just Drupal, you have to add the comma Drupal practice in there. And then you've got both code standards working for you.
What's the difference between the two?
You know, what I have found is that if I only use one, I'm not catching everything. So I think Drupal is basically like bare bones. This is what you have to do. Otherwise, we will make sure your module that you're submitting is not accepted. And Drupal practice has a lot of beneficial things for normal Drupal development to keep track of.
Can you show the path to this file?
Absolutely. Okay, that was supposed to work. I think I edited something. There we go. No. No. There we go. So in the idea folder is an inspection profiles.
So do that for every project?
It's a little pain, I will admit that. But the benefit I get is the confidence that if I make sure it passes in my terminal, it won't get rejected by my build process because we use continuous delivery, and I'll have to fix it later.
Are these standards, do they also come with PhpStorm, or do you have to go out and grab the latest standard?
These standards are brought to you by the Coder module, which you can find on dgo.2/coder, which is the Drupal.org URL shortener. So they've painstakingly been working on those code sniffer profiles for years. And I just found out about them about a year ago. I was so excited.
So you don't have to do anything in PhpStorm to say that I have these profiles. They're already, PhpStorm will discover them because it's a module on your site.
Yeah. PhpStorm will discover them because of how it obeys the autoloader. Because now Drupal 8 has all auto-loaded code. So
For Drupal 7 then?
yeah, for Drupal 7 you might have to do some work. Which you can definitely do. Let's jump back to that. So
I also set it up globally. So I don't remember off the top of my head exactly how I did it, but I've got it set up globally, so every new project I just tell it where it is.
So it's much easier to see when you don't have your PhpStorm in presentation mode, which makes everything giant. But you can click this this icon here that I don't seem to be able to click. You can set the let me go refresh here. Set the. If I was able to click this, you would be able to select custom, and then you'd be able to use that 3-dot icon to navigate to where your rule set is. But isn't this cool? I could click the refresh button, and now I do have to hack that file again.
How did you know that you could do that?
Oh, I guess I don't. How did I know?
Yeah.
I tinker.
You just thought I'll add a comma and another thing and see if it works.
Yeah, I just started poking around the folder that it generated and noticed that here was this file with the word Drupal in it that I didn't expect. And then I said, oh, this is the thing that governs the rule sets. So I just hacked it, and then it worked, and I was happy. Just reaffirming the melatonin loop or the whatever loop that I'm just going to keep on using it because it just keeps on rewarding me. All right, back to the slides. Passive scans, making it use Code Sniffer is great, but even if you don't go through all that effort, it still has really good passive scans, and you can take a look at the right gutter for all the things that it has found that it's confused about, that it wants you to take a look at. If it's yellow, but if it's red, pay attention, because that's probably a bug that will resurface later. And also, if you're like looking through your code, they try to provide these little ugly-looking squiggly lines for things that it has found that it is confused about. And you can hover over those, and you can get the suggestion or the question that PhpStorm has that you want to see if you can address. Passive scans, they're amazing. Another thing that I love to do is making sure that everyone is abiding by code standards. If I'm getting code from another person and it looks like I'm going to have to do a lot of work in order to clean it up, I can just use this command. And because of the Drupal extension, because of the fact that it knows Drupal's code formatting standards, this is most of the time the only thing I have to do. You can press Shift Command L in order to reformat a specific file, but if you were courageous, you could reformat the entire directory. Your change set's going to be pretty ugly, but you could still do it if you wanted to. One of the things I really love about PhpStorm is the fact that its clipboard remembers more than one thing. Isn't that crazy, Windows users? Because the clipboard retains a history of everything that you copied. And here, they copied these 3 lines of text, and then looking at the clipboard, and you have access to all of them, which is super great, because I want to, if I'm really doing a replace and fix job, I want to like copy the thing, paste it to another place, but then I also have to fix more than one thing at a time. So I want them all on the clipboard to be able to access that. You press Shift Command V for that, and then you'll access the clipboard. As soon as you paste the one that was like on back history of the list, it becomes the first on the top. So you don't have to go back to the clipboard for that. You just keep on pasting that in for every instance that you need to fix that for. Single file health check. By this time, you've already set up your inspections. You've got it working exactly the way you want, but you just want to make sure that this one file that I'm working on right now, instead of everything, has all of its things that need to be fixed. So you can press Shift Option I or Shift Alt I to get that health check working. And you can get a nice report of everything that it thinks is wrong. And usually it's things like spelling, too. It's like, okay, I'll ignore that. But if you've got something that shows up in PHP Code Sniffer, then yeah, I got to address that. Scratch pads. I used to work with a developer who would not use any tool without something that would just immediately open a ready-to-throw-away scratch pad so we could paste whatever he found on the internet in and just fix it there. So or just work with an idea, try to format some code. PhpStorm has scratch pads, and it's able to open a scratch pad that is aware of specific coding standards. Like you can open a PHP one, and so it uses the same Intellisense that other things have, but it doesn't have the Drupal extension working for it, so it doesn't know about Drupal's APIs. But still, the idea of a scratch pad is that once you create one, you're going to have it. You're going to have it forever. And Michael, this is something that goes over from one project to another. So if you have like a thing that you just figured out that you're going to be reusing over and over again, you can create a scratch pad for it. And then you'll just have it, and you'll forget about it. But they're doing a much better job these days at making sure that you know where it is. It's like every time you're in the default view of all the files that you have in your project, you can have scratches at the end, and then you'll be able to find it. They were always there. They've been there for like 5 years, but you actually had to go to the top here to look at all the different scopes that PhpStorm knows about, and then you would have to actually access the scratch pad scope, and then you would be able to see it. But, yeah.
So how do you do it now? I missed the first part.
Yes, it is Shift Command N or Control-Shift-N. And then you'll be able to open a Scratchpad. Yeah, and a lot of times what I'm really trying to do is format a bunch of just junk text. Like later today, I'm going to have to make sure that I can prepare a whole bunch of text to do the raffle. So one of the really cool things I don't think I put on my list is that if I have a whole bunch of text and I want to make the same modification to all the text, I can put the cursor at the beginning, and then I can press Option while I drag, and then I can put the cursor on multiple lines at a time, and then I can do things like, well, that's actually a person and Drupal user, and then I'll just go back and put the text there. You can multi-line edit, which is very situational, but very awesome when you need it. Digital detective work. I do feel that there was a whole bunch of other time savers that I've forgotten to add. And if we have time later and you still have patience with me, I would love to nerd out about more. But I definitely don't want to lose time talking about the work that really sets apart, really levels up your skill as a developer, the ability to do detective work. And much of that means getting a debugger working. And as I mentioned before, getting a debugger working was like extremely painful before I found PhpStorm. So here are all the ways that it helps. When you're debugging with PhpStorm, they say that you have to do 0 configuration to get things working. That has a whole bunch of assumptions. But if you have done everything the way that it expects you to do it, and you have done that, and you just get these browser extensions, Xdebug Helper for Chrome, Xdebug Helper for Firefox, and you press the magic phone that is on the top bar of your, oh, I don't have menus here. But there's a phone, you pick up the phone, and now it's listening to all the debug messages that you're going to send it. You go to your web page, you refresh it, and it hits the debugger, the breakpoint that you put down. There are a lot of cases where that doesn't work. So here's how to troubleshoot. One of the first things you can do is to make sure that PhpStorm knows how to talk to your debugger. There's a good chance that it hasn't even been set up properly. I work a lot with the Drupal VM virtual machine, and there's a configuration setting that if you omit, I think it's on by default, but if for whatever reason you turn that off, like I did here, there's no debugger working, so it's not going to work. So make sure you've got a debugger working first. So yeah, you got your debugger working, but is it working at all? You can go to the Run menu, and you can check that option to break at first line of your PHP script, and it will break immediately in the Bootstrap, first line of the Bootstrap of a Drupal site. And then you know that yes, your debugger is working, but it's just not hitting the breakpoint you put down in the code. It's not navigating to where you want it to be. And if that's the case, make sure that it's possible for the code to hit your breakpoint, because maybe it's in some kind of conditional logic that wasn't ever going to be hit based upon certain conditions. So break at the beginning of the function instead of where you wanted to put a lot of breakpoints in. They're free. Just break everywhere. You can even type a PHP command xdebug _break to like tell PHP what's the word I'm looking for, explicitly that you want to break here, and sometimes that's helped a lot. So break early, break often. And if you're still having problems, then, oh, I didn't update the screenshot. Then you can break on first line, like it was, and then just keep stepping. Just keep stepping over each function. The keyboard shortcut for that is F8 on both Windows and Mac. You can just step over the next function, keep going to the next function, and eventually it will leave the bootstrap and go to the next file. Because maybe the problem is it doesn't know where that next file is. Maybe your file structure is so weird, like, hey, Drupal likes to put its vendor folder outside of doc root sometimes, and it doesn't know how to get there. So you got to teach it how to map, like, based upon this incoming URL, you're looking for this code, and that code is here. That's all you got to do. And then 9 times out of 10, you go through that list of things, and the debugger is working. It's only been like one case where that didn't work, and it eventually did get it to work by typing in that xdebug_break function. So, one of the things that I was talking to someone yesterday about this talk was the fact that they didn't know that PhpStorm had a database console. Because your job as a detective is to find the truth, and the whole truth. And sometimes that truth is that the database is messed up, especially if you're creating a custom entity and you goofed. So you can set up a database to work, and did you know that it's able to talk to the database even in your virtual machine? A lot of people use virtual machines. Docker. I bet that works too. So here's basically how to do it, and that's kind of small, isn't it? Can you guys read that? So you basically have to access the virtual machine, and in this case, the URL that my virtual machine has is the local bolted -9, and then you use the Vagrant user in order to log in. Sorry, Dr. Folks, not my wheelhouse. But once you're able to securely connect to the virtual machine, you're able to access the database in between, and that's what the left-hand side is showing. Once you're in the virtual machine, you don't have to do things like URLs. You can simply use localhost, and then you provide the database name, the user, and the password, and then you're able to connect. And once you're in, it really pays off. I used to be a database developer, which is probably why I like Drupal so much. One of the things that I had to do all the time is to create queries, but they had to be formatted a very specific way, otherwise the pull request would be rejected, and I had to fix it. Which is why I love this database console. It has Intellisense. You can you can create your query, and then it even knows about the tables that it has indexed, and not only about the tables, but all the fields. Like, here's a where case where I'm saying where the name equals something like path. Give me everything in the key value table that has something with path in it. And then I kind of goofed up path here. You got to, with the query, you got to put the % before and after the text. And then you pressed, Shift Command L is how you would reformat the query after I execute it, and then it just perfectly gets that query the way that those other people would accept it. So if you care about things like formatting your queries, like me, it's in there. It's awesome. You're able to expand the individual tables, and you're able to see the entire anatomy of that table. What types of fields are there? Does it have an auto-incrementing index? All kinds of awesome stuff. And I even believe that there's an ability to create a ER diagram of all the tables. I didn't include that in the video. Just thought of that. So that was the Digital Detective. Let's look at your questions. I see one's in. Not sure if it was clear that you don't have to install Coder on your project. You can do it globally. Oh, and you provided some excellent instructions. I'll make sure that gets out on how to do that. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, back to the speaker notes. What's really great about PhpStorm is that you can make it adapt to the way you like to work. I'm eventually going to talk about my favorite plugin, but I want to just jump to the thing that you can do without using it. In PhpStorm, there is a configuration section called the Keymap. And in the Keymap, it has all the keyboard shortcuts that are available throughout PhpStorm. And the cool thing about it is that while there's a huge list of things that have keyboard shortcuts, there are also actions that don't have keyboard shortcuts. Like, you could create a keyboard shortcut to close all the tabs. So a lot of times I'm working on things, and I just open a ton of tabs, and I just want to close them all at once. So here I see that the keyboard shortcut I wanted to use was used, so I did a different one. And now I've got a keyboard shortcut to close all the tabs. I'm going to open some tabs, and then I'm going to close them all. So if there are things that PhpStorm is capable of doing, but you just want a keyboard shortcut to do it, you don't have to ask. You don't have to like create a ticket for their team. You can just do it yourself and get it working. And one of the best ways to jumpstart the use and the memorization of all the keyboard shortcuts is to use a plugin called how did that work? Key Promoter. Key Promoter has had a new revision called Key Promoter X, and it is the most annoyingly helpful plugin I have ever found. It will open a prompt on your screen for about 7 seconds. That's about enough time for you to generate a white-hot hatred for that modal. You just want it gone. And you can make sure you never see it again if only you could memorize what that keyboard shortcut, that mouse action for. And so you end up like learning like all the keyboard shortcuts eventually, because if you're a person like me that has done a lot of things with the mouse, you can memorize the keyboard shortcut for that. And if you're doing a thing that doesn't have a keyboard shortcut and you do it 3 times, it will ask you, hey, you want to create a keyboard shortcut for this? And then, yeah, you can do it immediately. And then never use your mouse again, except for when you can't move it from one screen to another. PhpStorm also has the ability to just give you a cheat sheet of the most commonly used keyboard shortcuts. And you can find that by going to the Help menu and clicking on Keymap reference. It's nicely formatted. I don't know if I can move this to the other screen. Because there are different keyboard shortcuts for Windows and Mac, it will give you the right one. And you can just print that out, put it on your wall, or put it on your desk somewhere, and just go to that every now and then. This is a slide where I was going to nerd out about things, but I just want to hear from the audience. Is there something specific that you want to know about PhpStorm? And we can dive into that first. I think, yes?
Do you have anything to say about Vim mode?
Well, I don't really use it because I was an Emacs guy. Which is maybe why I like PhpStorm so much, because it feels a lot like Emacs without the crazy. I guess there is some crazy keyboard shortcuts. Oh man, that explains everything. So I've never used it. Sorry.
So I'm still stuck in my baby developer mode using Notepad++ for all my coding, and it sounds like this would be a total replacement for that, especially when we're working with FTP files. So is there anything you still see value in working with Notepad++ on? Or do you just...
Notepad++ uses less memory. I was a fan of Notepad++ for a long time too. And then I started using Sublime Text, and that was kind of a replacement for that one. Biggest takeaway is that you've got your process. You use Notepad++. Things are working for you. You have to weigh the costs of shifting from that tool to something else. So that payoff better be good. And I'm telling you, the payoff's good. You can do a lot of things with PhpStorm that you can't with Notepad++.
Along the same lines, do you see use for Sublime now?
Yeah, I stopped using Sublime. I still support the project. I think you can contribute to the financials for the effort. But I haven't needed to leave PhpStorm for the last 4 years.
Text editor, that's what I use it for.
Yeah, again, it uses less memory. It provides Intellisense. Does a lot of great things for you. I never could feel completely comfortable with
I don't write code in it, I literally use it as a text editor
Yeah.
for documents.
And now I've got scratch pads. So if I want something, I'm just not going to, I don't want to actually include into my project. I just want to have a dummy little file and I have a scratch pad.
Can you talk about the concept of a project? And so, for example, I'm going to create a new module. Do I take an
Yeah.
instance of Drupal and create the project just for the module, or do I
Right.
create a project for the whole instance of Drupal and then work within that?
I try to keep it simple. And if simple in this case means it just would be easier to have an entire Drupal site, and inside that Drupal site I'm going to have a modules folder that has a custom folder that has my module in it, then awesome. But you could theoretically create a folder that was just your module, and then with the Drupal extension, point to where a Drupal site is. And so it would bring in all the API information about that. Usually the determining factor for me is if I do a search for everything, do I want to search Drupal 2, or do I only want to search what's in that module? And if I only want to search what's in that module, then I'll use the Drupal extension to bring in the APIs instead of actually being a part of the project. You brought up project, and I just want to clear this because a buddy of mine had this question a while back. Never use the new project. It's way too complex. I understand what they're going for, but that's not for us. We get projects land in, it's got a zip file, it's got an archive, git checkout. That's not for us. Just use open. Open. No, I can't see it. It's a weird angle. But there's an open menu. You can just open the folder that contains, oh, yeah, I can see this one better. Open, yeah. Thank you. And then and once you open the file, it indexes everything. It'll recognize that, hey, this looks like a Drupal project. You want the Drupal extension on? You can tell it yes or no. It'll set the coding standards for you appropriately. You set that, you're good to go. And then get working right away instead of having to make a series of decisions. You weren't asking that, but I just wanted to drop that.
Would you use that versus the open directory? Is it part of the
Same thing.
Now, yes, okay.
What about new project from existing files?
Nope.
Sounds like the same thing.
Too much. Too complex.
That's the one I use all the time.
I don't like it.
It's easy.
If it works for you, I'm not telling you to change your flow.
I generally do that one is because I'll clone a new project down, and then I'll use that, and that will also allow me kind of in the flow to also set up debugging all at once.
It's been a long
a local server through PhpStorm for that, so that's kind of why I do that.
My development process has been using Drupal VM for the last 2 years, and I never have to worry about doing extra work to set up the debugger anymore. But I have faced many years where I did have to worry about that. Did you know that Xdebug has a page called xdebug/wizard.php? We're going
So wait,
off.
before you go to that, so how do you set up a new, so if you clone a new project down, what do you
Yeah.
do to get it to PhpStorm then? Just a new project, you don't use new project, just open,
Just open.
and you point at the
With-
project root,
Yep. To where the files are.
and then that will create the .idea
Mhm.
directory inside there?
And it'll recognize that it's a Drupal project, do all the things I want it to
So it
do.
sounds like that's very similar to what I'm doing minus the local server stuff.
Yep. One thing I didn't mention, you brought up FTP. PhpStorm has the ability to get FTP working, and I would be able to do that if I could get out of presentation mode. Not sure that. I think if we started doing that, well, I think it would be all the way down the rabbit hole. I think it would lose like half the audience here. But yes, search for it. There are FTP functions if you want to. Were you asking about FTP? Someone So yeah, and then if you had the workflow where you're editing the file and you want to FTP it up to the thing to see the change of the thing, you can do that. If you want to do the thing where you want to open the file that's actually remote and compare that. Oh my goodness, I didn't talk about the Git tools. I didn't talk about the Git tools. Did you know that PhpStorm had awesome Git tools? You can look at all your local changes. I'm going to change a thing. Sorry, token module. I'm going to change a Travis file. PHP 7.1, please. Thank you. And then you were able to see all of your changes that it knows about. It's not trying to hide anything from you. Usually there's a tab that shows console, like all the Git commands it's actually doing, in order so that you can see, I'm not sure you're doing that right, and then you're able to see like what it's actually doing. And if you were to copy that and paste that into your thing, then into your terminal, you would be able to see that working. You can also press Command K if you want to do a commit.
Something up there, because nothing's changing.
Well, I'm only changing it in my local.
Oh.
I'm not actually going to push this out. I don't have permissions to modify the token module.
No, I
saying
didn't-
the screen is not.
Yeah, we're not
can't see
seeing what you're doing.
Of course. Of course. We were going to do that at least once. So we're going to modify the thing. And then I'm able to see like all the different changes that are in this project. And then I'm able to press Command D in order to see a diff that opened up over here. Yeah. And then Command D would, let's see what's different here. There we go. You're able to see this wonderful side-by-side diff. If you're doing even crazy stuff like a rebase, it has a really great way for you managing all the merge conflicts that happen in a rebase sometimes. You're able to see like on a file-by-file basis like what the difference is. And it gives you the ability to take yours, theirs, or merge the two.
I'm sorry. I literally for 1 second, I missed how you get So how'd you get the side-by-side?
You go to the list of files that have changed,
Yeah.
and then you press Command D.
For diff. Okay.
Yeah.
I
Here's a better change.
wish I sat next to you at work.
I had a good buddy of mine who no longer works with me named Joe. I don't think that's the reason why he left. But I would always turn to him and I would say, hey Joe, you know what's so great about PhpStorm? And he was super into it, super enthusiastic about it. And we just would. He enabled me for quite some time. Yeah.
There's right-click options for all that when you're in the interface.
Sure. Mouses.
When you're getting used to it.
Nice.
Nice.
Key Promoter is not a part of PhpStorm default. You actually would have to install it. And did you know that PhpStorm has quite a few plugins? You're able to search the config for plugins. And then you just click on Browse Repositories. So you never have to leave PhpStorm for this either. And you're able to search for all kinds of things. Like I think there's some stuff that is specifically related to NPM.
So
And
can I order your lunch through PhpStorm too?
ooh, that's a good idea.
Fight Squad plugin.
My company has an online lunch ordering system, and if it only had an API, then yes, I would be able to do it.
So once you've customized your PHP on your system and your system dies, you have to do it all over again in another system. Is there any way of, of wrapping that all up into a config file you can move between your platforms?
Yes. I can't see it, but you've got an export settings, and it will bundle up all your. I don't think this is project-specific settings. I think these are global settings that you're able to export and be able to import to another project. But a lot of things that, but there isn't too much you would want to save, is what I'm trying to say. A lot of these things are just, we will work on so many different projects that, if you had to do the same thing over and over in each project, that would become painful. So there's not a lot that really needs to be retained. Drupal Extension is there, and it does like most of what the fine tuning you would need to do. The only thing that I've found that I needed to hack each project is that code sniffer hack. And, you know.
The fact that it comes with Drupal now means that it's a lot easier to have something consistent between.
Yeah.
If you have to spin it up again.
Yeah. And then, once you have commits, you can press Shift Command K and actually do your commit/push into the repo. And we could nerd out a little bit about how it accesses task managers like Jira, if you would. That's a little. I didn't think we would be up for that. One of the things that I know another person who didn't come to this talk is eventually going to want to hear is the idea of scopes. I hear the main complaint I hear about PhpStorm is the fact that it indexes a lot of things and it's indexing all the time. If you copy something into your project that's really big, it'll try to re-index everything. If you look at how PhpStorm uses memory, most of the time it uses CPU cycles and uses memory. It's when it's indexing things. So sometimes it becomes really important to tell it to don't index all the things. Just ignore some things. You can control that behavior. Let me get out of the plugins. Yeah, good. Okay. By looking at directories. Directories. There we are. These are all the things that you're telling it to care about. And I've specifically told it to exclude the vendor directory that gets generated and regenerated and regenerated every time Composer install runs. So you can tell it to ignore some things, and you're able to, I don't know what resource root resources means, but if you wanted to, like, if you really care about color coding things, you could do that. Make sure it's all defined to be the right things. What's becoming really important to me is that here's a huge Drupal project, but I only want to care sometimes about my custom code. And for that, I can create a custom scope, where it's only going to look at my custom code.
Hey, Chris, just to know we're 3 minutes past.
Oh, I knew that was going to happen. Okay. Yeah, custom scopes. Cool. Last questions? Rude remarks?
I have a real quick one. That's a pet peeve of mine, PhpStorm. I don't know if there's a solution. So I teach a lot, and I like the presentation mode. I don't know if you're familiar, obviously, with presentation mode. But my pet peeve with it, and I'm trying to figure out the way around it, is when I go into presentation mode, I lose my sidebar.
Yep.
And there's no hotkey, so I know you can't fix that.
There is a hotkey.
For presentation mode, it doesn't show up in the menu.
It doesn't show up in the menu. Oh, hotkey to turn
To get presentation mode
off.
out.
You don't have to turn presentation mode off. Every one of the side panels, like the list of directories, the Git one, all have keyboard shortcuts to open and close.
So when I'm in presentation mode, if I knew the keyboard shortcut, I could get there. is what you're
Yep.
telling me.
So basically, when I launched the presentation mode, I got what you got, like just the document of one document. I can't even switch tabs.
Right, yeah. And I want to switch tabs. And what you're saying is...
So Command 1 opens and closes the directory.
God, freaking time.
Command 9 opens and closes the virtual the VS the Git panel. Command 7 opens and closes the tab that shows the structure, the anatomy of the file that you're looking at, all the interrelationships. Is it inherited by something? Is it inheriting other things? And then to switch tabs, it's Command Shift square bracket, but I only have one tab open. That's supposed to work. Command Shift square bracket? Oh, that isn't working. I have to figure out what the Shift tabs is. But there's a thing for that.
Command 1, though. That's something else for me. I can do that.
It's supposed to be Command 1.
Yeah, I know if Command 1 is mapped to OS 10 thing for me. Command 2 works, so I just got it on map.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah, I think when you installed PhpStorm initially, you're able to tell it which set of keyboard shortcuts to obey.
Right, now you solved it, that's,
Yep.
that makes me quite happy, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.